So I've been playing Prism for a couple months now, and I have to say like 90% of my wins come from my opponents making a single mistake. So instead of suffering through 100+ games against the Prism like I did, instead I'm just gonna chuck all the info that I gained into a video to save everyone a shit ton of time for themselves. I'm Tog, and welcome to We Make Best. So getting straight into it, I've actually got a full blueprint on what to kill and when to kill it that any hero can use when going up against the ALS looping Prisms. But for it to make sense, let's talk about what Prism actually wants, which I like to split into 3 game phases. The first phase being setting up Soul and Figments, second phase being what I like to call the Aura Vomit turn, and then phase number 3, something we'll just call post loop. So in order to ALS loop enough turns for it to matter, the Prism actually needs a couple things first. That being at least around 6 Soul, I would say, and at least one of the 2 Figments between Erudition and Rebirth. And so just understanding that Prism wants Soul and Figments during this phase, we can start to put things on a priority list on what to kill and what to do. So number 1 on my priority list is we want to deny their Soul generation as much as possible by blocking and or popping Heralds and killing all the Soul generation auras like Merciful and Genesis really highly. But this is what brings me to the biggest mistake during this phase, which is not also playing aggressive. You can often force the Prism to go off with their combo turn before they're ready, which will make phase 2 and phase 3 super easy for us. Also, you just have to remember that half their deck doesn't block when they bring in all these auras. So put some damage on them and actually punish them for having to keep these large hands to play out these 4-cost auras. So to summarize this phase, deny as much Soul as you can, try not to let them search out Figments as well, while getting aggressive with damage and on hits. But now, whether we force them into it or they found a way to set it up, let's move into phase 2, which is the Aura Vomit turn. So everyone knows the ALS loop at this point, but honestly, like 99% of the player base have a massive misconception about it. So everybody already knows, bring your action point generators like time skippers, time snaps to be able to kill the ALS and then something else. But the biggest thing that I see is these players are using them so wrong. And I know I'm gonna catch a lot of people off guard here, but the must kill priority for Angels in order is Avalon, the Rebirth Figment, Bellona, the War Figment, and then it's Soraya, the Erudition Figment. This is what I'm talking about with people making a mistake that instantly lets me win the game. The most common mistake is I establish a huge board full of auras and angels, then my opponent pops their one-off time snap or time skippers to kill ALS and then Genesis, or ALS and then Soraya. What they should actually be doing is saving that AP generation for when the Prism flips Rebirth into Avalon to be able to kill ALS and then Avalon. Because if there's no Avalon, that's it, donezo, no looping, phase done. And if you use your extra action point on any angel other than Avalon, Prism can simply bring it back using that angel. And then I know a lot of people already didn't know this part, but then we go on to the second as well, which is being Bellona. And the reason Bellona is the second highest priority is because this is how they'll actually kill you. The ALS doesn't just win the game on the spot. It's just a lot of turns of swinging for 8 until they can find the extra ALS with multiple Genesisi, whatever. And then they can pivot into Avalon plus Bellona, which turns that 8 damage clock into 10 damage, into 12, into 14, you get the point. That's how they actually kill you. So the big takeaway I want you guys to get from this is get comfortable under the ALS loop. It's gonna take literally like 40 turns for it to actually kill you. You've got time here to just block, keep a card to kill the ALS, and even if you're running time snap potions, you actually have time to just block out and wait until you draw it. The clock is that slow, but as long as you can kill Avalon, that's it, phase is done. So if we slowed them down and chunked them out during phase 1, then we were able to effectively stop the loop in phase 2. Now comes phase 3, which is what I like to call the post loop. And this phase is definitely the easiest one of them all, because Prism only has a limited amount of ways to actually win the game from here, with the 2 main options being the Bellona Angel spam or a Last Hope triple Celestial Cataclysm for 21 to 27 damage turn along with a Herald. So if we played phase 2 correctly, we killed Avalon, killed Bellona, we can already tick that off. And it's common that one of the Cataclysms was actually used to block earlier in the game if we played phase 1 correctly, or somehow it ended up in Soul, maybe from a lighter Soul or something. And then also on top of that, they're gonna need 9 Soul, so if they're nowhere near 9 Soul, then you don't have to worry about it either. So this one's not that common, but you definitely want to double check if it's a possibility or not. And that's because Prism is actually extremely vulnerable to being fatigued in this phase. And that's because she lacks a real weapon. So if we focus on clearing Angels and blocking Heralds, it's extremely common we can just fatigue them out, since during the loop, Genesis has just been eating at her deck. But this is where we're going to loop back to phase 1 a little bit, because if you did enough damage during phase 1 and played it correctly, you're going to have an additional win con here of just finishing them off with damage. Most of the auras don't really matter at this stage, like Genesis and Merciful. Maybe Pierce matters unless you can pop, so maybe Passing matters to let you pop, but it's hard to say. It would all depend on your game state and which hero you're playing. But to summarize this phase, all you have to deal with is Bellona and potential triple Cataclysm. Look to fatigue them if they're low on cards, or look to finish them off if we did enough damage during phase 1. And just understanding these game phases is what's going to help you determine what's important and when it's important. And I can guarantee you this will drastically increase your win percentage into this ALS loop Prism build. But hit me up for any other heroes you want a how to beat video on. But for now, we outie. Peace.